host of sports media podcasts, and a sports business journal contributor. Somebody in the know. Sources tell me Saturday's game between the Indiana Fever and Dallas Wings averaged 2.49 million viewers on ABC. These are early projections. I'm going to have some finite numbers for you tomorrow. That's down slightly from last year's corresponding Fever Sky game for the W.
The sports world is finally confronting something nobody wanted to say out loud. For 2 straight years, the WNBA has been operating like the Caitlin Clark effect was some kind of bottomless money machine that would never run dry. The story sold itself. Stick number 22 on a broadcast and watch every viewership record crumble on cue. But pro basketball has never worked that cleanly. The opening numbers just landed for the Indiana Fever's heavily hyped season debut against the Dallas Wings, and for the very first time since Clark arrived, that ratings curve isn't rocketing skyward. The numbers came in below last year. This isn't a takedown piece. This isn't some bitter rant from the cheap seats. This is a sober, clear-eyed breakdown of what might be the most compelling business and basketball case study in sports today. A real market correction is unfolding right in front of us. Supporters are speaking up, the front office is sweating bullets, and the league's billion-dollar trajectory is suddenly on shaky ground. We have to strip the feelings away and look at the data, break down what Stephanie White is doing schematically, and confront the brutal question hanging over everything. Is this a temporary stumble for the Fever organization, or are we watching a deep structural disconnect between a team and the people who made them matter? Because what came next flipped the entire conversation.
The victory laps that many people usually do, well, the victory lapping ain't victory lapping anymore. This is also using the new ratings method, which inflates numbers, whereas last year's number is before the change. This is down a bit more than it even seems on the surface. Not bad, though. Last year's would have been well over 3 million with the new rating system, so this is not great, to be honest.
Let's anchor this in the actual numbers, because context is everything here. Per early figures circulated by well-regarded sports media trackers, Saturday afternoon's matchup between Indiana and Dallas pulled an average audience of 2.49 million viewers on ABC. Pull that figure out of context and it's genuinely impressive, drawing 2.5 million people to a regular season WNBA broadcast on a Saturday is a huge moment for women's hoops. It confirms the floor of interest is still extraordinarily high. The problem is that sports television lives and dies by year-over-year trajectory, and stacking this weekend's figure against the equivalent ABC opener last year, when the Fever faced the Sky and brought in 2.7 million viewers, reveals an unmistakable slide. There's also a technical wrinkle worth understanding. Nielsen rolled out a revised measurement system this year that effectively pads the totals by counting out-of-home audiences differently. The NBA, MLB, and college sports are all enjoying organic boosts from this shift, which means 2.49 million today is, in mathematical reality, softer than 2.7 million was 12 months ago. The honest read is that a meaningful chunk of last year's opening weekend audience simply didn't show up this time, and the picture got bleaker from there. To make sense of the slide, you have to set the box score aside and zoom in on what's actually happening between the lines. The friction bubbling up online doesn't come from random hatred. It comes from 2 basketball worldviews crashing into each other. When Stephanie White stepped in as head coach, the assignment was to take a gifted but raw young group and turn them into a true title threat. Her credentials hold up. Her feel for the game is well documented. The catch is that her chosen approach looks nothing like what Clark's most loyal viewers signed up to watch.
Getting crushed all over the place. $28 tickets for a game this Sunday. $28. You get a hat, you get a drink, you get a bag of cheeses, and you get a hot dog, and you get a seat for $28. I've never seen this team beg for tickets more than they're begging now. Even last year, when Caitlin Clark was day-to-day for 2.5 months, they never begged like they're begging now.
They're folded over, gasping. Stephanie White comes from a coaching tradition built on egalitarian, multiple-option offense. She wants the rock circulating. She wants several hands touching the ball every possession. She wants Aaliyah Boston operating as a facilitator from the high post. Through a pure basketball lens, that's a perfectly defensible blueprint. It keeps an offense from collapsing into predictability. The complication is that Caitlin Clark doesn't fit the traditional mold. She's a once-in-a-generation outlier. She authored her legend at Iowa and reshaped the women's game by running everything as a high-volume, ball-in-hands conductor. Her audience shows up for a very particular flavor of basketball. Pick-and-rolls run from way out, bombs launched from the logo, defenses dragged into uncomfortable shapes, and laser-guided passes flung from impossible angles while she conducts the whole orchestra. When the coaching staff parks Clark in the corner, takes the ball out of her hands, and asks her to play decoy or pure spacer, that's a deliberate basketball choice. It also fundamentally reshapes the entertainment people are tuning in to consume. Viewers feel cheated because the athlete they wanted to see is being deployed in a way that mutes everything that made her go viral in the first place. There's no ill intent from the bench, it's a calculated bet, and the early ratings indicate that bet is pushing the casual audience away. Then came what changed everything. This stylistic mismatch on the court gets magnified by the way the roster itself is built. Running a layered, sophisticated NBA-style scheme demands specific personnel to make it function. And this is exactly where the Indiana front office is taking heavy, mostly deserved fire from people who study rosters analytically.
$8 for the game, damn. CC fans are really boycotting. I remember the cheapest tickets used to be $200. What happened? The Stephanie White effect is killing y'all business. You won't see a single penny from me. I quit watching because of the incompetence in the office and the coach. No thank you. This is so sad.
The front office is in trouble. Pull up Indiana's depth chart and really sit with it. Amber Cox and Kelly Krauskopf have assembled a group that's wildly perimeter heavy. The list goes Clark, Kelsey Mitchell, Tiasha Harris, Lexi Hull, Shatori Walker-Kimbrough, Raven Johnson, and Sophie Cunningham. A flood of guards, all hungry for minutes, all needing touches to make an impact, all operating outside the paint. Then you flip to the front court and the cupboard looks alarmingly bare. Aaliyah Boston is a bona fide cornerstone, an all-WNBA caliber player who locks down the paint. Behind her, though, the Fever are leaning on undersized forwards, streaky role players, and zero genuine rim-protecting bruisers. In today's WNBA, length and toughness decide who sets the pace of a game. When Indiana faced Dallas, that front court shortage got ripped wide open. The Wings feasted on the offensive glass. They imposed themselves at the rim. The moment Boston went to the bench, Indiana's interior defense practically vaporized. Asking Caitlin Clark to grind through an unforgiving WNBA calendar without a front court capable of throwing crushing screens and protecting the basket is unreasonable. Running White's distributed offense becomes a pipe dream when you're constantly losing the rebounding battle and surrendering putbacks. Supporters aren't fuming because they resent management. They're fuming because the arithmetic of this roster simply doesn't compute as championship material. People completely came unglued after this. The collision between how the roster was built, what the coach wants to run, and what supporters expected to see is now bleeding into the local market data.
It's the sad reality. If these people are all Indiana Fever fans, you're not being desperate. You're not getting desperate for $28 family nights. Do you know who does $28 family nights? The Miami Marlins. Because they can't get anybody to show up. So they got to do gimmick tickets to get people in the building.
That $2.49 million figure isn't a tombstone. It's a warning light. It's the dashboard alert flashing on a sports car that's been gunning the throttle without ever popping the hood. Indiana possesses the most valuable economic engine women's basketball has ever produced. The whole world is fixed on their building, but having potential and converting it are different things entirely. The grace period has expired. The business side has stepped into the spotlight. The choices made over the next month, who plays when, what deals get worked, how the offense evolves, will decide whether the Fever turn into the dynasty everyone promised, or end up filed away as the franchise that mismanaged its way out of a billion-dollar moment. We want to hear your sharp, level-headed take. Is the ratings dip just the market settling into a realistic baseline, or is it directly tied to Stephanie White's system pushing supporters away? Should management slam the panic button and chase a true post player on the trade market, or does this group just need runway to find itself? And how heavy is the squeeze coming down from the league office on Indiana behind the scenes? Throw your thorough takes in the comments. Every single one gets read. Hit that like button if you back analytical, fair-minded coverage of this sport. And for the actual story underneath the noise, lock in a subscription to WNBA Pro today. The season stretches out long, the money on the table runs into the billions, and we're barely past the tip. Catch you when the ball goes up.
We have some early reports on the ratings from the Dallas Wings versus the Indiana Fever game. Less than last year, and it's looking like less than 2.5 million. Paige Beckers, Caitlin Clark, Leah Boston, AZ Fudd, the last 4 number 1 overall picks on the court at the same time. It's looking like 2.49 million viewers. Even Phoenix Mercury giving out gift cards to a shopping, like a ShopRite or a Pathmart or an AMP or a Sprouts, giving out $65 gift cards if you buy a ticket. 2.49 million viewers. I'll be back for you guys later tomorrow morning with a more finite number. Hopefully we get a peek as well.